What's the difference between Wall Street and Y'all Street? Well, today we'll learn the difference and meet the man behind the Texas Stock Exchange, a truly transformational financial movement for Texas. Everything is bigger and better in Texas. That's not just a slogan, it's just the fact. Texas leads in oil and gas production, high tech, cotton, beef, medical research, clean restrooms at Buc-ee's, and Texas ranks first in Fortune 500 headquarters. Texas now has its own stock exchange, which many believe will make Texas a financial capital of the United States and the world. We're with Jim Lee, who is the founder, the dreamer, this current CEO and chairman of the Texas Stock Exchange. Jim, thanks for joining us. You know, people are reading about this, and I get lots of questions. What's going on? How does this impact my investments, et cetera, et cetera? But let's go back to the dream first. When did you first think of creating a Texas Stock Exchange and competing with the New York Stock Exchange, competing with the NASDAQ, and making, this is another step in my view of making us as Texas the financial capital of the country and the world? When did this come to you?
Well, Governor, first of all, thank you.
Dan is good. Dan is good, so we're good.
It's natural to call you Governor, but I'll do Dan for today. It is, and congratulations on the new podcast and all of the subscribers. For 60 years, the state and leaders here have been thinking about standing up a Texas Stock Exchange. Did you know that the name, the Texas Stock Exchange, was registered and then abandoned and then re-registered 6 times over the last 60 years? And the Texas legislature actually in 1967 commissioned a study by the University of Texas to look at the feasibility of standing up a Texas Stock Exchange. That was a different time and place. We were trading physical paper back then. There were regional exchanges. And you fast forward, it wasn't really until 2019 when this effort really had legs. Most of the infrastructure from the U.S. Exchanges are in New Jersey. And New Jersey had a misguided idea of taxing transactions on the U.S. securities exchanges there. And that caused some of those exchanges to begin an engagement with the state of Texas. And the leadership here kind of explored that for a while. Ultimately, New Jersey backed off, and that effort went away. But it got our state leadership here thinking about how important it is to develop capital markets in Texas. And so Governor Abbott, as you know, challenged us. He said, we want you to build the Texas Stock Exchange. And, after all the people that have looked at it, we're the ones that got it done. I remember, Dan, standing on the platform with you last year with Governor Abbott and Speaker Burrows when we signed into law the capital markets legislation. I think we all knew that day that something really big had just happened. And I think I remember your comments at the time. It was that you liked the movie The Giant, and that in Texas we do really big and bold things. And that's certainly right. This is a bold idea. And as we've come to market, we are the best positioned, most legitimate challenger to ever take on the listing duopoly in New York. The impact of what we've accomplished this month, the launch of the exchange, I think will be felt in this state for generations.
First of all, I like dreamers and I like entrepreneurs, and that's what you are, and you've been very successful in your other careers and being involved in the markets. One of the things I want to walk through this, as people watch and listen, Jim, their natural whether they're a sophisticated buyer, whether they don't own any stock, but or maybe just let their 401k plan handle it, how it impacts them. Because the bottom line is, how does this make investing in the stock market more profitable or easier for the companies to join the stock exchange and for individual investors? So let's break it down into the first part. The Texas Stock Exchange is not doing direct business with those buying the stock. you're doing direct business with the stockbrokers and the funds, the Goldman Sachs, et cetera, who do business with you. And why would those companies do business with you instead of listing on the New York or the NASDAQ?
Well, that's a great question. And, over the last, couple of decades, we've hit new highs in the equity markets. Today, we have nearly a $80 trillion total market capitalization in the United States. That's half of the market value of all of the exchanges in the world. And yet what it masks is some underlying structural challenges that we have in our capital markets. The simple fact is, 30 years ago, we had about 8,100 public companies. And today, we have 3,900.
So, Jim, why is it that while the world is increasing companies joining stock exchanges in their countries, that we've cut it by almost 50%? Why in America is that happening?
Well, we made it complicated, expensive, and frankly, legally treacherous to be a public company. The only rational choice that our great businesses have had largely is to remain private. The SEC chairman, who is really focused on this, reforming the public markets to broaden access to public companies for everyday investor, he gave us the three reasons. He said this is due to excessive litigation, to the overwhelming cost of the apparatus of reporting, and to the weaponization of corporate governance. The Texas Stock Exchange and the state of Texas are addressing two of these, the weaponization of corporate governance and the litigation activism. And the SEC is addressing the third. They're moving aggressively to reduce the cost and the complexity around reporting. I think at the end of the day, we have a good chance of succeeding here by returning really to the first principles that made our markets really the envy of the world, and to make the trend more favorable for companies accessing the public markets. And it's in this area, I think, what we're doing in the state of Texas and what the Texas Stock Exchange is doing has such enormous benefits to everyday investors across not just in the state of Texas, but across the country.
So just to recap this, and again, this is a fascinating interview for me to do, or not interview, a conversation. We're just having a conversation here. No one's listening, Jim. Just remember, I always try to tell everyone there's no one out there listening. They're just eavesdropping in on our conversation. But we have lots of people listening, and they come from all walks of life in terms of where they are financially and where they are in age, and it's fascinating. So this is for me, it's a challenge because I want to get into the sophisticated side and the simple side. But before I get into the simple side for people like me, I invest in the market, but I don't really buy stocks. I just have someone that does it for me. So here is what I'm hearing you say, is that because of blue state, and I'm not trying to make this political, it's just the fact. What you're saying is because of the blue state mentality of high taxation and high regulation and interference with business in New York and New Jersey, and then a federal government under Obama and Biden, they were keeping what has become the standard practice in place. And because of a red state like Texas, where we've passed laws recently to make it more affordable for companies to list on our exchange, that helps investors. That's what's really happening. You have a conservative business president, and you have a conservative business-oriented state. And so we're really taking on the former Democrat presidents, and we're taking on the blue states that are making it expensive for investors on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. Did I simplify it enough for myself?
I think that's fair, but these trends, Dan, go back 30 years, and so they predate some of the names and the current office holders. It's true that leadership matters. And frankly, in the state of Texas, we have a structural advantage. I mean, we've had the same party operating here for what, you know this better than I do, 42, 44 years. Yes. And so what that does is it provides the most future-proof of all the jurisdictions in the country. In Washington, we tend to switch parties back and forth, and so you get snapback regulations, snapback executive orders, and it makes it difficult for businesses. to have a predictable runway.
Yes.
In Texas, we have a very deliberate process where we do really big things over multiple sessions. I go back to when the beginning of what we call the economic miracle was around 2003, right?
With tort reform. When tort reform came in 2003.
That's right. And you had part of it in '03, and then in '05, there was a follow-on, '07, a little bit in '09, and a form of loser pay in 2011. And so we did really big things that set this state on a multi-decade economic expansion, which is really the envy of the world. And I think what you did with the passage of the Capital Markets Bill has us on the cusp of another multi-decade expansion in the state of Texas. And it's true that some of the other states have lost their way.
So, Jim, sorry to interrupt, but when you talk about you track $100 million companies that have revenues of $100 million, and that there are many of them out there that have not listed on the New York Stock Exchange or not listed on NASDAQ, it's because of, again, the litigation that once was federal regulations and state regulations. And so that they then, by us making it more affordable in Texas and by the president helping for all states by changing regulations, with this change, more of these companies now will list on the Texas Stock Exchange, the smaller companies, because they can't afford it or don't want to face the litigation in these other states.
For an average Fortune 100 company, if you take full advantage of what the state of Texas passed by setting up your legal home here and listing on the Texas Stock Exchange, then you can reduce your cost by tens of millions of dollars per year just in the benefits around the saving of D&O insurance, different franchise taxes, the reduced proxy savings cost. This is before you even begin to quantify the savings of reduced litigation. And that will drive more and more businesses to seek access to the public markets. I want to make sure that Dan, you understand what I'm saying, and the viewers appreciate this. You know, the Texas Stock Exchange adopted the highest listing standards in the United States. Almost a third of the current companies that are listed in the United States are ineligible to transfer to the Texas Stock Exchange. That seems like a big number. Well, it's only about 0.5% of the $80 trillion of value or market capitalization that's out there. And so there's a lot of noise that's out there that remains listed on the other two exchanges. So we've actually adopted the highest quantitative standards, but we're working with the state and others to set the conditions to drive down costs for new companies that want to access the public market and for the existing companies so they can flourish.
So when you say they don't qualify to come over, it's because we've set higher standards here. I know when we were working on this bill, and that was very important to be sure that the Texas Stock Exchange has the highest standards. Let me share this with the viewers and the listeners that this obviously, if they don't know this is obviously we're firing a shot across the bow of the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ because they've kind of jumped into the state real quick with kind of a pop-up office because they don't like this competition from Texas. I'm saying that. You don't have to say that, but they weren't coming here opening pop-up offices before the Texas Stock Exchange came along.
Yeah, so we expected this reaction. Look, they're smart operators, and it would have been odd for them not to react to us. You know, they had 230 years to pay attention or find Texas on a map. And it wasn't until we arrived that they suddenly had this pro-business, pro-Texas epiphany that overcame them. And so you're right. They responded to us by setting up pop-up exchanges. And the sole purpose of these exchanges that they've set up in the state of Texas is to do but one thing. and that is to keep their listings business and their exchange business in New York and out of Texas. I don't think it's going to work. I think companies see right through this. And so, Texas, the Texas Stock Exchange is the only exchange that is building capital markets in Texas, the personnel, the infrastructure, and the primary listings. And that's what we're setting out to do. I'd welcome the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ to do the same, but that's not what they're doing.
By the way, when we think of every investor, 401k plan, or for maybe when they bought their very first stocks, or if they're a mature senior investor, we've just always looked to New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, thinking it's the only two, and the name of Wall Street. And you have changed this. I love the street that you're on. Tell the folks what street you're on in Dallas.
Well, our friend Ray Perryman came up with the concept of a Y'all Street as the alternative to Wall Street. And, I think it's wonderful, and I think it says quite a lot about not just the Texas Stock Exchange, but something much larger that is happening in North Texas. Our street will actually be called Exchange Place, and so it's fitting that really the new home of capital markets that's being built up right here in North Texas would have the proper street name.
From Wall Street to You-All Street. So let's go now. We talked about why companies have only had two choices, and why new companies have chosen not to list because it's gotten expensive. Our listings on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ have dropped 50%, while the rest of the world is growing on theirs. So now let's talk about Mary and Joe on the street right now, watching a listing, to Dan Patrick, watching a listing. Again, I want to get back to, okay, so I'm going to buy a stock. Am I going to see it pop up on the stock exchange in Texas? Is it going to be on the New York Stock Exchange? If I buy shares of whatever company it is, explain how that works to the average investor like me.
What you and I, when we go in and access the market, you have the best prices and the most depth and most liquidity that has ever been available to those wanting or seeking access to the public markets. And so what we need to do is broaden this now. And we need to have our great enterprising young businesses access the public markets earlier so that all of us can participate in the tremendous growth and upside of our most exciting new businesses. And, what the state has done to kind of house it, where if you're going to set up your corporate headquarters, do you want to do it in a legacy jurisdiction where there have hostile legal and tax policies, or do you want to go down to the state of Texas where there's a pro-business mindset and where they're setting policies so you can flourish, and an exchange that's aligned with that, that's interrelated? So it used to be where you headquartered, where you had your legal home, and where you listed were kind of distinct and separate. Now they're interrelated by statute in some cases, some of the benefits, so that you're seeing businesses en masse move to Texas. Tesla was the kind of the first after you passed the capital markets legislation. Dillard's followed. And, the watershed moment was Exxon.
Yes.
And so May, Exxon, who had been in the original Standard Oil in New Jersey, moved out of New Jersey and into the state of Texas after 144 years in New Jersey. And it did it with an overwhelmingly positive vote. 71% of the shareholders voted to move to the state of Texas and to set up their legal home here. Dan, they did that because of the policies that you and the other state leaders put in place. And behind that, almost immediately after that, Dell moved here. Energy Transfer just this week moved all of its partnerships here. And I can tell you There are hundreds of household names, big businesses that are poised to move to Texas. And this is trillions of dollars of market capitalization that are moving to Texas to take advantage of the benefits of headquartering here, of having your legal home here, and listing on the Texas Stock Exchange here. So we've changed the construct together.
Yeah, we are now, as a state, we passed California, we passed New York some time ago, and other states. We have more Fortune 500 company headquarters now in Texas than any other state. We're now at 57. You go back 10, 15, 20 years, we weren't even in the game, and now we're number one. And what that means to our citizens are job opportunities. Job opportunities. What it means to our citizens is our economy grows by the tax receipts we receive from the businesses who move here, and we have a very low tax environment for business compared to any other state, but that will contribute to our overall growth. And you're going to see the opportunity again. To me, the most exciting part of this is when you explain that there are hundreds of businesses with 100 million in revenues that aren't on the stock exchange because it's too expensive other places. So that gives me as an investor, as an average investor, a chance to get in more on the ground floor of companies. This is really exciting. It's one of those things, Jim, that, in the legislature, we pass a lot of bills that no one puts a headline in the paper. It's a short headline, Texas Stock Exchange, but what does that mean? That I'm proud of, that, working with the governor, working with the speaker, and the members, we all came together to do this because you were able to lay out a vision that we understood. Because my first question on any bill that comes before me, anything, is how is this good for the people of Texas? And if it's not good for the people of Texas, we don't do it.
I think our mission is to remain true to being an exchange operator and to really focus on the core functions of what national exchanges do in the country. And really, it's trading with the most innovative platform, and to align with companies that are going public or that already are public or going public, and to make being public the preferred option rather than stay private. And that's really our role. That's where we're focused.
And last question, and thank you for walking through this, because my guess is people have learned more and heard more about this in this long interview than they have heard or read anywhere else. And that's why I wanted to do it with you. I've known you for a long time, and when you first told me about this, you guys were pretty far down the line with this and saying, hey, we can make this happen. You had to raise a lot of money, millions of dollars, to start this business, and it was very quick for me to notice this would really be great for Texas on so many levels. But you and your investors are taking the same risk any other businesses take, and you're going to work hard to be customer friendly and make it affordable so that your business grows. So the last question, when is the first day? I know you're up and running, the systems are up and running. When is the first day someone will see stocks exchanged on the bought and sold on the Texas Stock Exchange?
Well, I'm proud to tell you that we are trading stocks right now on the Texas Stock Exchange. All the symbols that there are in the United States will be trading on the Texas Stock Exchange. And then in September, we will put up listings of exchange-traded funds, which are a big part of what everyday investors use. They look at ETFs as a vehicle to get exposure beyond just what a single stock offers. And then companies can list on the Texas Stock Exchange beginning in October.
Yes.
And so we expect to see a lot of businesses move to the Texas Stock Exchange and to take advantage of kind of what we've done together with the state, which is to set up, a pro-business aligned legal structure. At the same time, you have an exchange that's focused on, the success of a public company and trying to set the conditions so that it's preferred to be public, not to remain private, which is what unfortunately has happened over the last 30 years.
Hey, look, Jim, thank you for doing this. As you said, it's been tried and talked about for 60 years. It's never come to fruition. I know it's taken a lot of effort. You're a really, really smart guy. You understand this. That's why you were able to present the program to investors and say, look, this is good for Texas, it's good for investors, good for companies. So thank you for taking on the challenge. And we want you to be successful because it makes Texas very successful, and I have no doubt you will be. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan, and thank you for your leadership. When we were on the signing platform last year, you talked about being big and bold in Texas. Yeah. Well, we intend on doing just that. We are going to open and close markets with a cannon fire, which is what we do in Texas. And I'm just delighted to be here, and I'm so appreciative of your leadership of the state and the condition that you put us in. I think you're going to look back on your term, and you've had so many successes as lieutenant governor during your time. But perhaps one of the most important and lasting will be that you championed and your colleagues championed standing up capital markets in the state of Texas. I think it's going to benefit Texans for generation. It could have the impact on North Texas that DFW Airport did, in the late 1960s and early 70s. It will have that kind of an impact.
When everyone finally decides to move from Wall Street to U-All Street. Thank you, Jim.
It was my pleasure, Dan. Thank you. And thank you for having me. And congratulations on the success of your podcast.
Thank you. This is just another example of how Texas leads the nation and the world in innovative ideas. This is very exciting for Texas. Thank you for joining the Lieutenant Dan podcast. Be sure to share it with your friends and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Dan Patrick. Thank you, and God bless.